Welcome to Cards Retro Reviews. This time around we're going to be reviewing Courier Crisis for the Sega Saturn. Now this one's a bit special because I actually, if you can see, it hasn't been opened. Right, so we're going to open it. What better time than to do it now, hey? Alright, so hang on just a sec. Sorry, technical difficulties, give me a sec. Come on, what the fuck? They made this thing idiot-proof. Fuck. Sorry, give me a sec. Sorry, give me a sec. It's just, I don't know how the fuck they wrapped this. It was just, oh shit. Come on. I can't get into it, Mom! I'm starting to see a lot of simulations popping up on Steam lately that seem to be of incredibly dull jobs in real life. So when I think of fun, I'm not thinking of a warehouse and logistics simulator. I mean, it still didn't stop me getting in a bundle somewhere along the line, but the same thing could be said about Woodcutter Simulator 2013. Perhaps the worst game I've played in the last 10 years, maybe even longer. Since they put 2013 in the title, are there going to be sequels? Because I would prefer to pepper spray myself in the face than go through a sequel. So when I thought about getting on a bike and riding around doing a low-paying job, it's not exactly how I pictured fun. I loved Crazy Taxi, and that's pretty much this game, except instead of a bike, there's a taxi, and instead of envelopes, there's people. So really, how is this any different? I love that game, so this should merely be an indirect prequel in spirit, right? On top of that, I've been in between games of Missplosion Man with one of the most annoying protagonists in a video game ever, Super Frog HD, which is ultimately a bland collectathon, the amazingly immersive Hotline Miami, the confusing little Inferno, and the Spanish platformer known as Guacamole or whatever the fuck it's called. So, I had very little time at the moment to play the Saturn. My choice again was something I wanted to play for quite a while, and I didn't want to waste it on something I knew was going to be bad. Straight off the bat, it was made by GT Interactive, who also made the repugnant Trash It. There is not enough words in the English language that could describe my dislike for such a game. Then I also read on IGN and GameSpot that they thought this game was total shit, which, okay, admittedly at this stage, it's not looking good. It was released as a one-player on both the PlayStation and Saturn, and from what I can tell on YouTube, PlayStation 1 version looks to be a better port graphically. What we're going to be looking at is the Saturn port, which was released in all three territories, PAL, US, and Japan. Presentation is different. The menu presentation is quite good when I think about it, but it's hardly practical. I get the general gist with a few of the icons, but some of those have left me thinking what the hell they even are. It does look really good at this point though. In-game presentation is also pretty stylized. I think if I spent more time with the game, the street names in the bottom left-hand corner might have actually meant something more. The few hours I stuck with it were spent following the arrow in the top right-hand corner for direction. Short of that, everything else on the screen makes sense. The only other thing I could fault it for was the bike chain in the bottom right hand corner and what it represents. Yes, okay, I know it's my health meter, but it wasn't really made clear on how much life was lost depending on how badly I stacked it. I would run headfirst into a building and lose a little bit of life, but then I'd get kicked by a pimp on the sidewalk and it would do insane amounts of damage. Graphics are not too bad for what they set out to accomplish. People have complained about clipping, slowdown, and a general choppy frame rate when talking about the PlayStation 1 version. But the only real negative I have with the Saturn version is that it suffers from slowdown. But again, nothing so bad that I put down the controller and walk away with my hands in the air. Pedestrians and buildings look pretty pixeled, and there's no real excuse for this. I was thinking about saying, well, hey, it's 1998, what do you expect really? But by this stage, they were doing far more and far better with less in other games, so really it's a cross against the game. The animation on the pedestrians is pretty poor, consisting of what looks like 4 frames tied together to give us really more of a representation of falling over rather than the act itself. Now, I'm surprised on the draw distance of the game, to be frank. I reviewed Formula Karts and their workaround was to make every track take a corner about every 20 meters, so you didn't really need any draw distance. And this has a few streets which go on for quite a bit, and the draw distance, well, okay, it isn't perfect, but it is better than expected. The levels are much of a muchness, just with more cars, dogs, and pedestrians in the way, so you better fucking love the level layout. It could be seen as lazy level design, but there's something here which I struggle to explain, which makes me not really give a shit about that aspect. It's not that big a deal. Sound is amazing. Now, I shouldn't really sound surprised, but it has a soundtrack to it which is a representation of the grungy character you control, with a handful of grungy punk songs that are really good. Sound effects are also pretty good. Bands like Big Drill Car really add to the game in a big way. I would make comparisons to Tony Hawk Skateboarding, Crazy Taxi, and Quarantine or Death Throttle, and those comparisons would be completely 100% accurate. What part of being able to ride over pedestrians and small children could not possibly be liked? The controls, however, are a little sloppy. The default controls have the 3 most used buttons, which are accelerate, brake, and sharp slide around corners being A, C, and for some fucked reason, Z. Your shoulder buttons are punch only, and then Y is kick for some reason, and B is jump. Who thought that was a good idea? If you don't like that, you can change it to some degree. But the other configurations don't make any vast improvements on that configuration, so when I hold the controller, it looks gimpy. Trying to accelerate on top of doing a bunny hop over a jump required some patience on something that should have been easy to do with good controls. On top of that, there's a slight delay. It's not much, and it's something you're just working with the game, but it's there, and it's slightly annoying. But I also feel like I need to quantify. I've played games with dead shit controls, and they would be a 10 out of 10 for shit controls. Here, you're dealing with a 3, maybe a 4 at a push if I was assigning arbitrary numbers in a way to gauge how bad they are. So, a little, but not that bad. On top of that, the gameplay is very samey-samey. Then again, I don't know what people were expecting. It should have been seen as an arcade game more than anything that allows you to save and get a better bike. It should have been timer-based, where the new envelope extends the time and dropping off also extends the time, and everything else in between was ticking down to 0 like they emphasized on Crazy Taxi. It's still time-based, but it never really gave any sense of urgency in the over-top way Crazy Taxi did. And really, I shouldn't be making comparisons because Crazy Taxi came out the following year on hardware that was far more capable in the arcades, whereas this was purely a console release. Replay value is pretty poor. One mode, one player game, and once it's finished, put it down and back away from the game. Would I recommend this game? Before I give you the yes or no answer, please understand I've searched through all my games I've reviewed up until now and did some digging on what I recommend and what I don't to give me some guidance. Maybe I have a formula to my recommendations and sometimes it's clear cut. But then there are some that come with some prerequisites, and this is going to be one of those. I will recommend this game, but only on the cheap. You see, I own the US copy, which cost me $20, and that's a perfectly acceptable price for this game. But from what I've seen on eBay, a PAL copy and even more interestingly, a Japanese copy will run you into some serious money. And there are too many ifs and buts in order for me to recommend it at the fucking stupid amounts that is being asked for this game. The game isn't deep enough, with small graphical problems and baffling controls. Price shouldn't sway a recommendation, but in this day and age where retro gaming is trendy on top of not making the games anymore, but the rising levels of interest from people every day, makes it an increasingly expensive commodity. And some of these games are not worth the money that's being asked and should only really be sought by collectors. While this is slightly better than that, the answer is still a yes, but with the price being right.